Check. 1, 2, 3.
The D.
Brief.
This is the D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's arts
and entertainment scene.
This is the D
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I'm your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
I'm Becky Scarcello.
And I'm Jag.
And it is, of course, another Thursday, which means we've got another in-depth interview, somebody who is making things happen in the arts and entertainment scene in Detroit. Today, our guest is Kwaku Osei-Bonsu. He is the organizer of Black Metro Eats and is putting together Detroit Black Restaurant Week, which is happening August 20th through the 26th. Kwaku, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Hi there.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
So let's start. What is this event, Detroit Black Restaurant Week? And tell us a little bit about how it came about, the history of it, and the mission.
Sure. Detroit Black Restaurant Week is an opportunity for people around the community, whether they're in Detroit proper or the Metro Detroit area, to patronize restaurants that they may have visited in the past or may have not, by way of a 3-course menu. So for lunch, we're offering a $25 3-course menu that is prefix in French.
Yes. I've always heard it two different ways, whether it's, is it prefix or is it prefix?
I'm just uncultured. I'm just like prefixed menu. Okay, sure.
Fixed ahead of time.
It's either way, yeah. But then for dinner, it's a $35 3-course menu.
So kind of pretty much on par with most of the other restaurants weeks in Detroit and in the suburbs.
Yep.
Yeah, nice value.
Yeah. And so, it's just an opportunity for people to go out, but it's also supposed to highlight the owners and head chefs. I think often there is a misconception that it's for Black people only to go and dine, and it isn't.
That's silly.
Right, gotcha.
Right, no. Everyone's welcome.
Yes.
Do you try and showcase restaurants that have been here for a long time? Do you try and showcase up-and-coming restaurants?
I try to diversify the lineup as much as possible. I think that it's important to bring attention to the mainstays that have stuck it out through 2008, we'll just say.
Yes.
But also the people that are new and that are courageous and coming to the scene. But even outside of whether they're old or new, I think it's also important to see a diversification of the types of restaurants. So we have food trucks, bars that are involved, like the Griot is they're a bar, and they do have pop-ups when it comes to food, but they're only doing drink specials for the week.
Right.
That's a cool place.
I
It's
love
tiny,
the
but
Griot.
it's
Yes,
the
very
vinyl
intimate.
collection.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's intense. Yeah.
This is something that's come up on the show before as a theme, and it came up when we were talking to Aaron Foley, the chief storyteller for the city of Detroit.
Yes, it's come up a few times.
It's sort of old Detroit versus new Detroit, and that while there's a lot of new and exciting things that are happening, it's also important to celebrate, especially, like you said, before 2008, before the economy
people who
fell
stuck
apart.
it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And who have been here the whole
Right.
time. So,
Yeah, no, agreed. I think that there's a conversation that's to be had surrounding equity.
Yes.
And I think that, just as you said, it's important to acknowledge the people that have been here and really have held down the fort while everyone else was running away. I graduated high school in 2009 and was literally running away. Can I please go to school out of state? And finally convinced my parents to allow me to. And when I came back, it was a different place.
So
But
where did you go and how long were you gone?
so I left in 2009. I went to Howard University in D.C. I graduated in 2013. From there, I went to New York and came back in 2015.
Okay.
what brought you back to Detroit?
I was just coming back for a 12-week boot camp for coding at Grand Circus. And so my intent was to take that knowledge and, sadly, I guess, contribute to the brain drain and go back to New York. But, I just kind of thought about it. I'm paying $1,000 a month in rent for a 1-bedroom apartment, which is considered cheap in New York or in Harlem. And New York doesn't really need me or my ideas or my efforts. I didn't have necessarily an emotional attachment to the city. So when I came back and I saw how much things had grown, I was like, I'm staying.
This is a point that I make all the time. So you were gone from 09 to 13. I was gone from 13 to 16, and just how quickly things change and how fast they change. And sometimes you don't notice it if you're here, but you leave and come back, and it's just like, wow.
Right, yeah. No, things had really, really changed, and I was surprised because when I left in 2009, we know what it was like.
Yeah.
People that were living very well were experiencing things that even they had never experienced from a financial standpoint.
That's so true. I was gone for a year in 2009. We got an opportunity to live in Europe, and I was so sad to come back. I mean, and this is my hometown. This is my family and everything, but I was like, I don't want to go back there. It's awful, you know? And when you've experienced something else. But one of my neighbors owns Grand Circus, so I'm going to have to thank them for giving you the... Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Give him the thank you for getting you back here. Nice, because you've been doing amazing things.
Yes, thank you.
Well, and you do make a point that, on the one hand, Detroit is big enough. It's a major city. It feels like there's a lot going on. We get all the major sports teams and all the major concerts coming through. But at the same time, it's small enough that it feels like a person can make a difference in a way that they can't in a city like New York City or Los Angeles.
Absolutely. I think the impact is much larger here. And I guess I try to say that without sounding as much like a gentrifier as I do by saying that, because it's like, the opportunity,
very conscious of
the
this
opportunity
podcast.
is here. But aside from the fact that it's a cultural and a social gold mine, I think it also is a space where there's nothing but space and opportunity for you to do things that matter. And that's why everything that I do is purpose driven. It's not just an opportunity to make money off the backs of people that are thirsty for a social occasion. I think it really is an opportunity, to make a difference and to really see people this is change, but it's a good change. I think we're really one of the last cities in the country that will be considered major that has an opportunity to not just become white subway tiles and exposed beams and
Edison bulbs.
It's really an opportunity to remain authentic while being progressive.
That's something that Bourdain was saying. The quotes after he passed away is about how Detroit has come back and started to reinvent itself, not in this every America way, but staying true to its roots. And I wanted to ask you something we've talked about before in the podcast is, whether any entrepreneur, any artist, if you're in a place like New York or LA or San Francisco, you've got to work 24/7 to even get noticed. Yeah. But here, you can make a difference, and would you agree that you also have a minute to breathe and be a human being also?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that you can. You're not. Well, for one, I like to consume myself with my work, but you don't have to be consumed by your work just to make a drop in the bucket. I think that, for me, being a teacher, I can devote my summers to what I'm working on, and then when the school year comes back, I'm like, okay, well,
you're all in on the kids.
I'm teaching now, and so I have the opportunity to have a life outside of my passion, but also outside of my, I guess I would say, my purpose.
Yeah. So something we've really talked about with a numerous amount of guests is this lack of diversity and equity in the dining scene. And so many of us have been where the brand new restaurant has a white owner, a white chef, white staff, except in the kitchen. Their behind the house staff is diversified, but we don't see them. Majority of the patrons are white. So when people say to you, why a Black Restaurant Week? Can you just get into... We know why.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I think that that's kind of a question that's twofold, right? So on the surface, it is a conversation just about equity, right? And representation, and that it should be equal. I don't think that there's anything wrong with what you just described, right? Such as I kind of feel bad for the guys at Empire, because Mark pretty much shut them down.
They were made an example,
but I mean, I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. It's just that cannot be the only thing that's being shown. And so there's that side that, to me, at least to me, is more obvious. To some people, it's not. But to me, that's more surface. On the flip side, I think I look at the people that are younger, or the people that are here and have been searching for a purpose, or maybe have always had a passion in food and never saw themselves in other entrepreneurs that were doing things and got opportunities. Detroit is really becoming a tech hub, huge.
No question.
So it's when you exist in other professions, and there is not equal representation of yourself within those other professions that are already taking a back seat to STEAM, it's that much more important to see Black restaurant owners and Hispanic restaurant owners or Polish restaurant, whomever, just so that little person or that older person that retired and wants to start a restaurant can say, oh, okay, so I can still do this. And there's still an arena for me to not only do this, but have support in doing this. I praise the folks over at Food Lab because of what they're doing.
Yeah, they're amazing.
They are amazing, and they're really helping to bring everyone up. up to, I guess, par with one another as far as opportunities, whether it's within a brick and mortar or it's like a mobile opportunity for them to go and cater something. Like, there's such an underlying need for these sorts of entities, because without them, I just don't know. Like, I like to eat. I'm not a chef. Right, so I'm passionate about food because I'm
there with you.
Right, like I'm just like fat on the inside, and that's that's me. But I think that to someone else that might look like me, or you, who's like, I want to start my own restaurant, but like, does Detroit care about restaurants right now? That question being in the back of their mind, that could be like that voice of doubt. That's why Black Restaurant Week is important.
Yeah, who's my mentor? How do I get there?
Exactly.
Who's my examples?
Like I'm not a Dropbox, I'm not a LinkedIn, like, but I'm a startup. I get, you know what I mean? Like,
and quite frankly, I felt that way about women too. I mean, it isn't really till very recently that women were seen as not a cook, but more of a chef, and they could have their own place. So I totally get it.
Yes.
And there's a little bit of that, like we've talked about this before. In football, you have what they call the coaching tree, where this coach coached this team, and then he begat these coaches that came out of the system, and then they got theirs. You see that a lot with cooks and chefs too.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's important. I think, but the thing is, like, it's so much more unconventional. Like, I can't say, even in football, I feel like there's a club of sorts. You know what I mean? Like, it's similar to a fraternity. It's similar to the military. It's similar to lots of other.
You're either on the inside or you're not.
Or you're not.
Yeah.
But with food, like,
we all eat.
And that's the thing. So you can be an outsider, and that's your inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, when I think about that, and the fact that it's so, like, there was a special I was watching about these, like, old women that practice this old tradition of, like, pasta making. And there's, like, a lady who's, like, set out to make sure that this tradition doesn't die. And the fact that there's a concern around a tradition dying tells me that something's not being passed down.
Yeah.
True,
or someone's not carrying the torch. And that to me is a concern, because that means that either there's no one there to teach it, which I don't believe, or there's no one there to learn it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, what's probably happening is there's not a connection between those two people. The older person that has, and I guess we talked about the griot, who would be a griot of sorts that would hand this down, and then the young person then wants to pick it up. Like, there's no bridge. And so, just like in football, there is that bridge. You're going to practice every day. Well, what exactly is the bridge within food?
Yeah.
And that's a concern. Like, that's a big concern. So,
I've always been struck by the power of food diplomacy. And this is, you mentioned Anthony Bourdain. This is, I think, a lot of what he did was that connection that you have between cultures that people can make in food. And in some ways, people are more open to it, I feel like, in food. We have a lot of debates over a cultural appropriation, and whether Beyonce or Gwen Stefani is dressing up like a geisha or doing Bollywood, but in food we call that fusion, right?
Exactly.
And we like that.
Yeah, we want to try it.
We want to combine cultures, and we want to bring them, and it's such a great gateway to connecting with other people who from different backgrounds.
Yeah, and then you hear the stories. I ate this with my grandmother because it was a holiday, blah, blah, blah. And then you understand more behind it.
Right. But then it's also food, because it is eaten by everyone. I don't think, like, even I have recipes that were handed down to me, but it's rare that I think any of those recipes spark a moment of me wanting to go out and, like, I'm going to start a food truck based off of my grandmother's biscuits. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so rare. And that's that connection is just so fragile, because of that conversation of, like, is this yours, or is there even a need for a conversation of ownership when it comes to, you know what I mean? Does anyone own this? Right. But then also, like, is there a right way to do this? Is there a wrong way? Like, it's just, there's so much imaginary red tape around food.
Perceived red tape is not really there.
Exactly. It's not really, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really there, but there's just a sense of, like, I can't touch that.
Right. Yeah. Right. I didn't grow up with that. It's not mine.
Well, because even when you say, for example, like a Black restaurant, people, like, so if you were to ask yourself, like, what is Black cuisine?
You would think of probably traditional Southern dishes.
Like soul food, right?
Soul food,
And that's the thing. So it's like, there are stigmas that are attached even with, like, these labels on what types of food are whatever, like, because even when you say Black restaurant, like last year when I talked with Mark, like, we're talking about restaurants who are black owned that were like, I don't know if I want to be associated with the phrase black restaurant.
The restaurants themselves told you that?
Like
Interesting.
I'm good. I don't think I want to be recognized as that. Like, yes, we're black owned, but we're not a black restaurant. And I'm
We
like,
don't want to be put in a box.
so what's
of
a
some
black
sort.
restaurant? Well, they had to define it for me
Yeah.
because
Right.
I took it one way. I was like, well, I'm kind of offended now, but okay. And they're like, no, like, when you say black restaurant, there is a stigma. Like, people think, oh, it's slow service. It's only soul food. You're going to walk in, the host may not greet you. The menus may be dirty. Like, there's a stigma that's surrounding, like, black restaurant that I hope to break.
Sure.
Right. But I think also it's kind of scary to see the fact that people still resonates. Like, with people.
Another scary thing to see, speaking of Mark Hurlianchek, so we were talking about, you're in year 2.
This is the Free Press food critic
Free
we're talking
Press
about.
Yes,
food
yes,
writer,
yes.
a restaurant critic. You're in year 2, so year 1, he was just announcing it in the paper, factually.
Yeah,
just
like,
putting it out there.
doing us a favor.
Black Restaurant Week is blah, blah, blah. Here's the restaurants. And what was super ugly about it was all the commentary he got back in mail. Quite frankly, racist, hateful. Why do we need this? Well, why don't you have a white restaurant
Exactly.
week? Well, because that's like every other week of the year, And so he felt he really needed to respond to that. It was very surprising. So he was telling us all about that story, and he did a very thoughtful response.
He did.
Explaining a lot of the things we were just talking about. So within that past year, what have you seen change or evolve, or where do you think we are now?
Well, for one, I think that I've been able to do a lot less storytelling when it comes to the week of explaining the concept itself, which has been nice because it feels good for one, from a brand perspective, of course, it's like, Detroit Black Restaurant Week, and people are like, oh yeah, and I'm like, yes, you get it. But then, so I'm like, great, so now here are the restaurants, come eat. But like, on the flip of that, it's just also nice to not have to like break this down of like, no, it's not just for black people to go out and eat. Like, no, this is not just soul food restaurants. No, it's just like nice to not have to do that. But I think also what's changed is my perspective on the week. And I say that meaning like, so last year I had to kind of hire a few of my friends that weren't black to kind of go and push the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
Because I was doing it as a social experiment. Because I was like, okay, if they sign up, when I send, like I had my friend Kate, she went and she's, I'll say she's white. I don't completely know, to be honest.
She can pass.
She can pass as white. And like I had an Asian friend go. So I'm just like sending people out, like go and try to sign them up. And people were signing up. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, they really didn't sign up when I came. And I didn't know if maybe it was just later and they needed more time to think about it, what have you.
Could be other factors, sure.
But it showed me, though, that like at first I was offended by that because I was like, there's no reason that I should have to send a face of a different culture to a black-owned restaurant to sell Black Restaurant Week. But then this year, did the same thing, but from a different angle of like, I want you to see that this isn't only for black people.
Right.
Because like some of the restaurant owners were like, well, my main clientele isn't black, so I don't want to scare off people who normally come here. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So then I sent an Asian face, and they're like, oh, okay. So if they're down, maybe this isn't such a threatening week.
It almost added a different layer of, I don't know, legitimacy.
Of legitimacy, yeah. And I mean,
and
that's essentially what we were battling the first year was legitimacy. Like, well, you're new. You don't own a restaurant. You're not a chef. Why are you doing this? It was a lot of questions, and I think Detroit is a city where it's very
parochial. Just sort of protect their
Suspicious.
own kind of.
Yeah,
Suspicious,
like
yeah.
it's very like there's very. I was gonna say there's a wall, but I can't even refer to walls at this point.
No.
Let's not go to
There's a
walls.
barrier.
A little bit of offense.
Yeah. I think that people are nervous.
You mentioned that idea of seeing somebody and having a model, somebody who looks like you in the career that you want to go into. Do you make that argument to the chefs and the owners, and does that argument carry weight? Does that resonate with people?
It resonates more so with the attendees than it does the chefs and the owners. The chefs and the owners are very much so worried about money.
Yeah.
Well, true.
Which they should be.
They're business owners.
It's a
They're business owners, so
Sure.
it makes sense. And I don't mean to say it as though they're greedy. I think they are literally just like, is this going to make me lose money?
Right.
Sure.
Well,
And
it's a tough business.
It is. And it's a week over week type of thing. So I get it. It's just, that is more so the argument there of like, No, we're actually looking to bring more dollars in the door from people that don't normally walk through the door, but I'm trying to show them that, okay, during this week, I don't want you to think that you're going to see a decrease in your normal clientele. Like, if anything, like, they're probably more excited to go because there are new menu offerings that weren't offered before.
Well, and that's true of any restaurant week, whether it's Birmingham Restaurant Week, Troy Royal Oak Restaurant Week. It's like, oh, I've been meaning to try that place, and I go online, look at the menu, and say, oh, that looks like a pretty good combination for $35.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's go try out this restaurant we've been meaning to go to.
Yeah, it usually makes it seem more approachable.
Yeah.
Can we talk about some of the restaurants? Can we walk through? And you've been talking about the breadth of different restaurants that you've got there. Tell us about some of them.
So I'm going to use the back of fire. So we've got River Bistro and Coop, which are both owned by Max Hardy. River Bistro, ironically enough, opened last year during Black Restaurant Week. And
there you go.
Coop opened this year.
Yeah, at the shipping
company. At the Detroit Shipping Company, yeah. And so we're doing a special dinner, the Chef's Table, at Coop next Monday.
I've heard an interview with Max. He gets it. He 100% gets it.
Oh, yeah. No, Max is
talking
like...
about teaching the next generation and all that.
Yeah. I admire Max quite a bit. Also because he did a lot of work in Harlem prior to coming back to Detroit. And so I kind of saw like this whole journey. I didn't know he was coming to Detroit, but when I heard his name, I was like, wait a minute. Like, what?
You had that connection, that
his
common
was a
ground.
similar story to yours. He came back for a few pop-up things.
Yeah,
and
it was just like
going to
wait.
come and go. And then he's like, oh, these sold out in like overnight.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to be here.
Exactly.
So, that's cool.
I mean, he has, I think, really great guy. I love his team and hoping to work more with him in the future. So if you're listening, Max. But so that's Coop. And then, so we're doing a dinner there on Monday, $25 per person for 3 courses, which is $10 cheaper than normal for dinner. The Griot, again, is a bar that we're featuring. Nax is like becoming one of my favorites. So Nax is inside of 3rd Street Bar. It took the place of Dangerously Delicious Pies.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he does really, really, really good gourmet sliders.
Okay.
So it's like he's got a really good jerk chicken slider, shrimp po' boy slider, even his regular like cheeseburger slider is amazing. His vegetarian slider, everything is great.
You said shrimp po' boy. I lived in New Orleans for 3 years, and Becky's got family down there, so my antennas just went went up. Yep.
No, it's intense. Like his food is really good. He's got a Haitian background, so he's very liberal when it comes to the seasoning. So that's nice. And then he actually also catered one half of the music festival I threw, Return of Ida Wild. So we brought him up, and he catered half of it. So that was cool. Yum Village is a food truck that I've been working with for 2 years now, and we're also throwing the kickoff, which is this Saturday at the DeQuinder Cuts Freight Yard.
So
Just talking about that on Monday night. I was just there for the first time.
Well, yeah, so we're doing, it's also the official after party for the Kindred Festival, which is happening at Roosevelt Park.
I talked about that too.
Yeah, so Leah Hill, the organizer of the Kindred Festival, is a really, really good friend of mine. So we're just like, we've been where she came up to Return of Ida Wild. I'm supporting her. So we try to work together as much as we can. So Yum Village is on there. Savannah Blue's debuting their new like rib entree.
Oh my God, they have a mean oxtail there.
They do. It's actually kind of problematic.
My mouth's watering right now. I know.
Well, no, I say that because we have the Jamaican pot on here, which is also really, really good. It's carry out, which is a bit of a different situation there, but Savannah Blue's not necessarily known for like oxtail is very strictly, we talked about ownership. It's very strictly Caribbean. Savannah Blue's very like gourmet soul food.
Right. Southern.
So when they not only offer oxtail, but it's damn good, like it's problematic because they're like, people are like, where should I go for Caribbean? And I'm like, Jamaican pot, Savannah Blue. Like, it really is a problem.
It's so true though. I went to Savannah Blue like dead set. I'm getting the shrimp and grits. I'm getting the shrimp. And then the waiter just so eloquently described this oxtail. I'm like, okay, I'll have that. Okay.
I've never had oxtail, but now you've got me curious.
When it's done right, it's so tender. It falls off the bone. That's a thing.
Good stuff.
But speaking of shrimp and grits, who you don't see on here is The Block. So The Block is also participating. These were just printed before they signed up.
Okay.
So we've got The Block. They have have an amazing shrimp and grits. Amazing shrimp and grits. And they've added like bacon into it. And I'm not talking like bacon bits, like bacon,
like pieces.
thick cut,
Bacon.
applewood smoked.
Stop
with
it,
the
I'm so
peppercorn
hungry.
bacon. Yeah. So
I'm the Jewish guy that had a bacon bar at his wedding. So now you're speaking my language.
Yes, that's
Yes,
right.
yes.
That's right.
I joke that bacon's the only reason I'm not vegetarian.
You know?
Well, I
like,
guess oxtail too. Whoops.
but I feel like I could pretty much give up
Meat.
every other angle
Really?
of pork but bacon. Like bacon
yeah.
is
I'm with you.
We've got EEMA, which is fantastic. That lobster udon, if you've never had it, you have to try it.
Okay, explain lobster udon.
Okay, so
While my mouth is already watering.
it's like, so think, I mean, well, it's so a deep bowl, like pho or ramen, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Thick udon noodles, but then you've got like these thick, meaty, but tender chunks of lobster
Stop it.
meat.
Stop.
And this
Just stop
lobster,
right
it's like, yes.
And which restaurant is this again?
EEMA.
And Mike Ransom.
Corktown.
I'm circling this.
Yes.
Mike
Oh, no.
Ransom, the chef there, is the nicest man.
Yes.
Like, he just talks to all the customers, and he's great.
Yes,
It's such a
no.
friendly place.
Such a friendly place. And I like it because it's small, intimate.
Yes.
And I've always, for some reason, when I look at just Asian-inspired restaurants in general, I really can appreciate a small setting. So, like, Noble Fish, you walk in and it's like 10 chairs. I can appreciate it.
It's
because
getting bigger.
They're
It is.
expanding.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, because they have to.
Yeah,
At this
well,
point, it's like, okay, guys. Like,
the demand.
Yeah. But I mean, prior to maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, it was very like, oh, this is just so great. It's
Like
in
a secret.
grocery store. Yeah. And so I like the feel of EEMA. Le Crepe, Dennis is wonderful. The crepes are amazing, and I'm proud of Le Crepe because I used to work there.
Oh.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I did work in restaurants for a while, not in the kitchen, but serving staff. And I worked at Le Crepe and Town Tavern at the same time. So I literally would get off work at Town Tavern and walk around the corner
it's right there.
and go to work. But at the time, it was owned by PJ, Paul Jenkins, who no longer owns it. But Dennis, the current owner, used to be the manager. And so Dennis bought PJ and Kermit out of their shares and now owns Le Crepe. And it's one of the few creperies that have kind of stood the test of time.
Agreed.
You know, and so I'm just really, really proud of Le Crepe just because they're really doing their thing and they stick to their recipes and they're really, really good.
And the gluten-free crepe is actually really good.
Really good, which is
tough
hard
to do.
Yeah, because gluten-free can honestly be kind of gross.
So
Becky is our
Totally
gluten-free
gross.
expert.
It can be kind of gross.
Don't even get me started
Yeah.
on like the sub shops that have the gluten-free
No.
bread. No. But the gluten-free crepe there is
Fantastic. Then you got Colors, which is over in Harmony Park. Love Colors primarily for their fried grits. So they make these fried grits, and it's a guilty pleasure of mine because I don't know. It's just that's like straight carbs, but but it's so good. Like it's so good, very
treat,
flavorful. And I love that they also employ people who are like returning citizens, and I can really. I aspire to own a restaurant that does that one day, just because I think, particularly in Detroit, there's a need.
Yeah.
It's
Returning
ridiculous.
citizens, meaning they've been incarcerated?
They've been incarcerated,
Okay, yeah. Right.
but also maybe some of them were dealing with homelessness.
Okay.
at
all
one
kinds of
point.
issues. It's an arm
Yeah.
of the Restaurant Opportunity Center.
Yes.
That started in New York after 9/11.
Yes.
Oh,
For
wow.
all the displaced restaurant workers.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's sweet. We take
That's
a lot
great.
of tour groups there.
Yes, and the food is really good, cafeteria style. Yum Village, Godwin has been working out of there as well. So I have a soft spot in my heart for Colors. We're working on Central Kitchen. If you hear me, Dennis Archer Jr., please fill out your paperwork. We're working on him. No, we ran into each other last week at the Foundation Hotel, and I literally walked up to him like, what's it going to take? And he's like, I called you. I'm like, no, you didn't. I checked my voicemail. He had called me.
Oh.
I had missed it.
Oh.
But I was coming off of a music festival. I explained he was very understanding, but he still hasn't filled out his paperwork. So please fill out your paperwork, Central Kitchen, because I love you.
we want you. In
That's
there.
great. I've been down there. That's a great
Yes,
spot.
It
Yeah.
is. It really
You
is.
mentioned the music festival, but we should point out you're involved in a lot of events. I mean,
yeah.
Black Metro Eats has a couple of other food events that you do throughout the year. Tell us a little bit about those.
So in April, and this will be an annual event, Put Your Mama Where Your Mouth Is.
I love that
a
name.
That
cooking
is
competition.
awesome.
Thank you. We call it Pim With Me for short because it can be very...
Yeah, you need an acronym for something
Right.
that
Yeah,
long.
yeah. I'm just like, Pim With Me. But yeah, so Pim With Me, or Put Your Mama, as we also call it, will happen in April. It happened this year, April 7th.
So what's that all about? How does it work?
Oh, man, it was great. So it's a cooking competition between moms. And so we had Mama Rose, who's the owner of Jamaican Pie, and we had like some local moms, and we had a dad compete in this year's competition, and it's a competition turned party. So you come, you buy a ticket, it's unlimited food, you get to taste, and the attendees are who vote. So you get a ticket when you walk in, and you drop your ticket in the ballot box of whomever you felt had the best food.
Okay.
So we partnered with Jerk and Jollof to do that this year, and it was an Afro-Caribbean theme. So all of the competitors
we
were
got to go to
Afro-Caribbean.
that.
Yeah.
My mom would get in. Do you have a microwave division?
So you know what's funny is like I've been brainstorming on like what the next themes will be, and so I've gotten a lot of wacky like themes. So of course I want to do like a seafood one, but I kind of do want to do like the quick like ready to go like
like the Velveeta.
So there's one that I really want to do like higher dining. So the foods that you make when you're blowed. In a sense. Like, you know, because I'm serious. Like, I've seen some really crazy concoctions come about. Like when people are like, I've got nothing but cucumbers, bacon, and cream chip beef or something.
And
like
Funyuns.
And Funyuns, right? Yeah, like, or like I've got a cinnamon bun and ketchup. Like, I don't know. Like, there's some.
Well,
it's
too bad you have the other event in the beginning of April, because you could clearly make it April 20th.
Oh my God! Hey, look. As you can see, obviously, I don't believe in there being too much to take on. So I have no problem doing two in a month.
Do you have a school vacation in April? You can kind of plan it around.
Spring break, yeah. No, that would fit actually.
I love
that. So that's that. We did it this year at the Bullock Green Loft, which is right there on Michigan Ave in Corktown. Beautiful space. So that was dope. And it's a party at the end. We have performers, like singers and stuff. We had Super Cool Wicked performing Ode to Moms. There's a song. I don't know. Have you guys seen the movie Soul Food?
No.
From like back in the day. Okay, so
I know what you're talking about.
There was a song by Boyz II Men called Mama.
Yes.
So we had Super Cool Wicked sing that as like an ode to moms. So it really is like a very, even though it's a party, it's kind of interesting how you can bring people to tears and then have them also twerking in the same.
And they're going to be at that Kindred Festival too.
Super Cool Wicked. And so that's a thing.
I'm just picturing my wife watching all these like Top Chef shows on Bravo and like
or Chopped.
That's the other one I was trying to think of. Yeah, so like now I've got to bring her out to the local in-person live version.
No, seriously though,
fantastic.
There's so much fun.
You better put us on the VIP list.
I got you. I've got you. Come through. We did. It was open bar this year, thanks to Sumptuous Spirits. So we love them. So yeah, you can come, turn up.
Are the mics picking up all of our stomachs rumbling at this point?
Right, because I'm just
seriously,
like,
I'm starving.
So there's that, and then there's Trail Grill, which is like Father's Day weekend, which is essentially the dad's version of Put Your Mama. I just felt like Put Your Daddy was kind of...
Yeah, that gets a little gray. You don't want it. That's a little dangerous territory.
Yeah. So Trail Grill.
So all those three things are under your Black Metro Eats umbrella, so people can go there and find out all about. Okay.
And Detroit Black Restaurant Week is happening August 20th through the 26th.
Yeah.
The details are all at blackmetroeats.com.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kwaku Osei-Bonsu, thank you so much for taking the time. This was fascinating.
It was so fun.
And now I'm hungry. You got to bring food next time.
I'm sorry, because I'm hungry myself.
Where's the picnic
As long as we get on the list, we'll be happy.
I've got you guys. I've got you.
All right. We'll go check it out. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.